Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, a nightly look back at a specific day in history and the historical context and consequences of that day. Now, we're going to do something a little different tonight. Usually, I cover a major event or two, a birth, and a death. Tonight, I'm only going to cover a major event and a death. They occurred on the same January 22nd, and they're very important. So let's take a look back at this day in history, January 22nd, 1973. On this day in 1973, the Supreme Court handed down its historic decision in Roe v. Wade, the 7-2 decision that effectively legalized elective abortion in the United States. This is a landmark ruling by the court. It defines much of American politics even to this day. You have pro-life politicians and you have pro-choice politicians. It has effectively divided the parties, with the Democratic Party being the party of pro-choice views and the Republican Party being the party of pro-life views. It's a determining issue for many people when they go to vote. Often you'll hear Republicans say we need one more justice to overturn Roe v. Wade, and you'll hear Democrats say that all that stands between the Republicans overturning Roe v. Wade is one justice, and pitched battles are fought along this issue. I think that it's really telling that both sides have gotten more extreme in their views in recent years, that those views are ascendant. On the Republican side, you have some people that take an absolutist view that abortion should be illegal in all cases, even rape and incest, and some even in the case of the life of the mother. That is, to me, looking at the debate on the pro-life side, just an extreme position that drives people away. And in recent years, Republicans and the pro-life side had been seeing support for pro-life increase because of the medical advances that have been made. And on the Democratic side, you see equally as troubling measures. You see the fact that now some politicians support abortion up to the moment of delivery. You see laws passed that are very controversial and have low support. You have a position that used to be a reasonable position, safe, rare, and legal, now laughed off the stage. The rare part, it's very troubling, and I think those of us who take a more nuanced and moderate approach to this issue feel very, very troubled. But I certainly do. Because I see both sides. I see the need for abortion in some cases, but also think that there should be some restrictions, especially after fetal viability. It's very troubling to see the trend. And look, it divides people. It divides families. It divides marriages. It divides the country. And it's one of those things that you look back on and you say, wow, it's a pivotal moment in the culture war. And it was today. And I also think that there's politicians on both sides. I'm sure there's some Democratic politicians that would love nothing more than for Roe to be overturned so they could run a scorched earth policy against Republicans. It would be an effective campaign and fundraising tool. Just as there's Republican politicians that never want to see Roe v. Wade overturned because it's an effective fundraiser and it turns out the evangelical Christian right vote more reliably than anything. They will overlook anything to get that next judge. And those are true believers. They truly believe it. But there are also Republican politicians who could care less about it and just want the votes and the fundraising. And then there's people like me who take a more moderate view of this issue. And you're never going to change anyone's opinion on this because people are so dyed in the wool about this that you're never going to change their views one way or the other. Very rarely will you get someone to take a different view than they held previously. The other event that occurred on this day was an event that overshadowed this. And it's hard to believe that one of the most consequential and landmark decisions handed down by the Supreme Court in history was overshadowed. But it was. Because at 3:39 Central Time in Stonewall, Texas, on his ranch, former President Lyndon Johnson suffered a heart attack, and it would be fatal. The news that it had killed him came to most Americans who were watching the CBS News with Walter Cronkite, and it's a report about Vietnam that was so consequential to the Johnson presidency. And Johnson was talking, or Cronkite, the director cut it off, went straight to Cronkite, sitting at the anchor desk, and Cronkite had the phone and relayed the news to the country. Cronkite, who earlier had made the announcement that, the flash from Dallas, apparently official, President Kennedy is dead. And then to make the announcement 9 years later, almost 10 exactly, if Johnson had lived to that November, that his successor, President Johnson, had died. And it was 4 years and 2 days removed from Johnson's presidency ending. Johnson had suffered a really massive heart attack in 1955 that nearly killed him, and was in really poor health after he left the White House. I think Johnson would have died at a young age no matter what, had he had become president or stayed in the Senate. He was just such an intense person and had a drive like none other. I encourage anyone that is interested in history and the American presidency, and especially American history in the past since World War II, really, to go get the Robert Caro books, The Years of LBJ. Get The Path to Power, that describes Johnson's life up till the aftermath of the 1941 special Senate election loss. Then you go into Means of Ascent, that focuses only on that 1948 Senate run, on the Senate election in 48 that Johnson stole from Coke Stevenson. You focus on Master of the Senate, about Johnson's just masterful control of the United States Senate and his bare knuckles, take no prisoner leadership of that body. You take the passage of power that is about Johnson's 1960 presidential election, Johnson's time in exile essentially as vice president, the Kennedy assassination, his first days in the White House, and his desire to see civil rights through. Just an amazing series, and I'm looking forward to the fifth and likely final volume of the series. I've read all 4 books that are currently published, and as I said, look forward to the fifth. Johnson did remarkable things and should be remembered for a lot more than Vietnam. If it wasn't for Vietnam, Johnson would be considered one of the 10 greatest presidents in American history. Not a doubt in my mind, and likely would have been reelected in 68 and to have 2 full terms of his own. So, a great life came to an end today. In Texas in 1973. He was 64. He died a very young man. Part of him dying young is that a lot of things that he had, his tapes that he wanted to be private for 50 years, have been released well ahead of schedule. You can go to the LBJ Library website and listen to the recordings. They're much more voluminous and informative than the Nixon recordings. You can see a master politician at work listening to those calls. You get the Caro books where Caro spoke to Johnson acquaintances and even Lady Bird Johnson and Lucy Baines and Linda Bird. He had, and Caro got a lot more frankness out of these people because of the knowledge that there wouldn't be retaliation. Obviously, the Johnson family's trying to protect him, but some of the associates were much more frank because Johnson had passed. So, 2 events that occurred on the same day, in the same year, really within hours of each other, that shaped American history. Johnson had a profound effect on American history, and a lot of his policies still reverberate today. And of course, abortion is the hottest button issue of all of issues in this country, and it was made even more controversial. It became a national issue on this day in 1973. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you again tomorrow.